Okay, hello everyone. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a work object and then how to change a program's work object. Let's say we have two work objects. How do you switch between one work object and the second work object? So let's go ahead and create a solution with the station and virtual controller. And I'm going to use a IRB 2400 robot for this example. So let's go down 2400, there we go, and select create. Okay, so now that we have our robot in our workspace, let's add a few other items here. One is the tool. Let's add a tool to this robot. So I'm going to go to my import library, equipment, and let's go down the list, tools, and I'm going to select the AW gun PSF25. So click on that. All right, so we want to attach the gun to the robot. So you can select the gun, right click, and then go down to attach to, and let's select the IRB 2400. Do you want to update the position of the gun? You say yes, and there you go. Okay, so now we have the gun attached to the robot tool flange. Next thing is I want to add a table to my workspace. So for the table, I'm going to go to import geometry, browse for geometry, and you should normally find this in your C directory. So if you click on the C drive, go to program files x86, ABB, Robot Studio, and ABB library, and training objects, and you find table.sat. So I'm going to click on that, click on open. So now we have the table, and we need to position the table a little bit to the front here. So we're going to click on the table, right click, select the table, right click, position, and set position. So for the X coordinate, I'm probably going to try maybe 600, and Y, we're going to enter negative 300. Okay, and then click on apply, and then close. Okay, so now we have the table, and you can rotate the workspace by pressing the Shift and Control key on your keyboard and the left mouse key. If you want to pan the image, press the Control key and the left mouse. Okay. All right, so now that we have the table, next thing we want to do is I want to add two rectangular blocks that we're going to use as an example for the work objects. So I've already created this using SolidWorks, and I saved it as a .sat file. So let's add that to this workspace. So I'm going to go to import geometry, browse, and in my case I've actually saved it on my desktop. So I'm going to go down. So this is the file. So wo.sat, click on open. All right, so now I have the part here, which is at the base coordinate frame. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to temporarily make the robot invisible. So I'm going to select the robot, right click, and select this option here which says visible to make it invisible. Okay, so now I have this block. So let's try to put this block on top of the table. So I'm going to zoom in and rotate my workspace so it's easy for me to select the points that I want to use to actually move this rectangular block to the top of the table. So two items that we need to make sure that are active are this option here which says path selection, and the other one is the snap object, right? So you want to make sure that these two are selected. Now we go over to the path, click on the rectangular block once, right click, position, and place, and we're going to use the 2-point method. So click on 2 points. Okay, so now we have the primary point from, primary point to, point on x-axis from, point on x-axis to. So we're going to move this by using the corner points and the points on the table. So whenever you're doing this, make sure you highlight the first digit with your mouse. You need to highlight them. So I'm going to highlight the first 0 here, which is a from point or primary point from. And since I have my snap object on and my path selection on, I can go to the path and I'm going to select this corner here. You can see the lower corner. You can see there's a small circle dot that appears. So I'm going to click on that once, zoom out, go to my table, highlight the 0, go to the corner here and click on that point. Okay, so I'm going to do the same for the point on x-axis. Highlight the 0, zoom in here, and I'm going to select this corner point, zoom out, and highlight the 0 here for point on x-axis 2. Go to the table, I'm going to click on this corner point, and when you're done, click on apply and then click on close. Okay, so we have one of the blocks sitting on top of the table. Let's add a second block. So let's add a second block. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go to import geometry, browse, and I'm going to use the same file again. So wo.sat, click on open. And we're going to do the same thing, position. So select the second block, right click, position, place 2 points. And this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and rotate my workspace so that it's easier for me to select the points on this side. All right, so that looks good. Okay, so again, make sure you highlight the first 0, go down, and you want to click on this point here. Okay, and then zoom out, and then select the 0, highlight the 0, and you want to click on that corner there. Okay, and then point on x-axis from, highlight the 0, and click on that point, and then highlight the 0, and click on this point on the table, and click on apply, and then close. Okay, so now that we have 2 blocks, I'm going to show you how to create work objects for both of them, and then how you can actually manipulate the program and use the work object that you create on the second block and use the program that you created for the first block just by changing the work object. Okay, so now let's go ahead and turn the robot back on. So I'm going to click on the robot, select it, right click, and make it visible. Okay, so now that's visible. All right, okay. So now what we're going to do is save this file or save the station. So in case we make any mistakes, we can always come back and use it. So file, save station as, and let me save this in my desktop, and let's call it lab number 2. Click on save. Yes. All right, so now we have this station saved. So let's go ahead and open the flex pendant. So I'm going to do the work object. I'm going to create the work objects using the flex pendant. So for that, we're going to go to the controller, flex pendant, virtual flex pendant. Okay, so now we have this flex pendant. Remember, this is the same exact flex pendant that you would have with your robot controller if you were doing this in the lab environment. So what you're going to do is we can hit this cross X check mark here, close that, and we want to make sure that the controller is active, and we want to set it to manual program mode. So you're going to click on this control panel once, and you can see right now this is in automatic mode. You want to select the middle option, which is manual mode. Okay, close that and select enable and select hold to run. So both of them you can see have turned green. So if you want to test to see if your program is actually going to run or your robot joint's actually going to move, you can click on these arrows and see if it's actually jogging. So you can actually see the robot is moving. So we know that the virtual flex pendant is now active. So before you create the work object, it's very important that you actually create a new program first. Okay, do not create the work objects first and then try to create the program afterwards. If you do that, you'll find that your work objects will not exist or they get erased. Okay, so very, very important. So first thing I'm going to do here is go to my program editor and let's create a new program. So I have a program here. If you already have an existing program, you want to create a new program from scratch, you can go to Tasks and Programs, File, New Program, don't save. Okay, so now we have a new program. Okay, so that's the first thing. Now, the second thing you want to do is go down back to the menu, go to jogging, and here you see it says work object, right? So we want to create two new work objects. So I'm going to select new work object. Let's give it a name. Let's call it new one, WOBJ new one. Click on OK. And let's create another one. So new and new 2. Okay, let's click on OK. All right, so now we have two new work objects. So the first, we're going to remember the WOBJ0, that's a default work object. Okay, so I'm going to go to WOBJ new 1 and we're going to select edit, define, and here we're going to select under object method, we're going to select 3 points. So we're going to use 3 points to define the location of our work object. So 2 of the points are on the x-axis and 1 point is on the y-axis. So here I'm going to select the first one here. And what we need to do now is to jog the robot. So we need to rotate this workspace and you can pan it as well. And so what you want to do now is go to your home, select under freehand, select jog linear, and make sure your object snap and path selection are both active. So click on the tool and now you can drag it and bring it over here, and that's going to be our first point. So don't worry about the gap, it's actually fixed at that point. The reason why there's a gap is because it doesn't show you the filament that is used for welding, since it's a welding tool, but the TCP is actually located at the right point. Okay, so now we're going to go back to our flex pendant. That's our first point, object point x1. So once we move it, we can say modify position. Okay, so that point has been modified. Now let's jog this to the second x position, which is actually going to be this corner there. Let's go back to our flex pendant and select the second x point, modify position. And the third one is actually the y-axis. So I'm going to jog my robot. This is actually my y-axis. Click on this and let's say modify position. Click on OK. Okay, so now it gives us some updated parameters about the work object we just created. So when you're done, you can click on the OK sign. And so now let's do the same for the second work object. So let's go to that and click on edit, define, and we're going to use 3 points. And here what we're going to do is we're going to do the same, but we're going to do it for the second block. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this and we're going to select the same corner point, but on the second block it's that location. Okay, and let's go to my work object, point x1, modify position, and let's jog this over to this point here, and second point x2, modify, and then let's jog this over to this corner here. Okay, so this one's a little bit tricky, so it takes a while to get it. Okay, so I managed to get it to this point here. And so what we're going to do now is select the Y point and modify position, and then click on OK. And it's going to update the calibration results or calculation results for the second work object. Click on OK. So we want to make sure that we've actually created these two new work objects. So what we can do is go to this option here, the menu here, click on this tab, go to the robot, and if you click on this work object, you can see now we have 1 and 2, right? So we can select any one of these. So I'm going to program my robot using the first one. So we're going to select work object new 1, click on that. So that's the current work object that we have. So we're going to close this, and let's go back to our program, and you can actually see here when you go up, so you have your work object 1 and work object 2, right? So new 1 and new 2. So we're going to select this one, and we're going to go to our program, and let's write a program, but we're going to remember our work object 1 was actually for this block and work object 2 was for this block. So I'm going to do is I'm going to send this robot back to its home position, and then we can start writing the program. So click on the robot, right click, and say jump home. Okay, so the robot now has gone back to its home position. Now I can come here and let's jog this robot, and let's assume that the robot is actually going to go from this point to this point. It's going to go all around this square shape. So we make sure it's at the right corner. It is at the right corner. Okay, good. So let's go to our flex pendant. Make sure you highlight the SMT, add instruction, and let's add the move-L command. Okay, so now you can see when you go to your move-L command, you notice here that it says work object new 1. Okay, so a few things we need to change here is the point. We need to define that, and we're going to call it new, and let's call it P10. Okay, and click on OK. And so hopefully it's remembered that, but again, just to be safe, because we changed the name, I don't know if it is going to recognize or remember the target points. It looks like it's going to remember the target points, so we don't have to select modify position again because it's already shown here. So it looks like it has remembered that. Okay, so now we're going to jog the robot to the second point, which is at this corner, and go back to my flex pendant, add instruction, move L below, right? So now we have the second point. So again, let's jog it, third point, and we're going to say add instruction, move L, and so on. You keep doing that for all the points. Fourth point, and let's go here, add instruction, move L, and let's come back here and add instruction, move L. Okay, so now we want it to come back to the home position, so we can just copy the first one because it's the same position. So copy that, go to edit, copy, and go to the last instruction line, edit, and then click on paste, and you can see the P10 and P10. It starts at P10 and ends at P10. Okay, so let's see if this program runs. Before we do that, let's change the zone values. I'm going to click on the zone, and we're going to make this, I should have changed that actually at the start of the program. Let's make it Z0. Z0. We should have actually done it the first time, and so then we don't have to do this for each line of code, but that's okay. We'll just change those to zeros, Z0, zone 0. Okay, and then Let's click on that and Z0. Okay, so everything is done. So before we run this program, remember you always have to debug. So debug, pp to main. Okay, and we are enable is active, hold to run is active. So if I click on the play button, you can see that the robot is going to go around that rectangular block. Okay, so let me stop this. Okay, so what we want to do now is, so let's assume that the operator for some reason has moved this rectangular block over to the other side. So this is one of the reasons why we create work objects, right? So as I mentioned, when you create a work object, the points are actually programmed with reference to the work object. So that's one of the reasons. The second reason is if, for example, the block has been shifted or the position has been moved, you don't have to reprogram all the points again. All you have to do is create the new work object and then update the points using that new work object. So that's the concept I wanted to show you here. So now what I'm going to do is, since we already have the second work object, so we're going to go here and select the work object, and we're going to select work object new to. Click on OK. Let's do that for all of them. All right, so click on that. And we're going to change the work object to the new work object new 2. Okay, so we've updated the work object now. You can see it's no longer work object new 1, it's actually work object new 2. So since we made changes, let's click on debug, pp to main, and let's run this program and let's see what happens. All right, so you can see what's happening. I did not program the second block, but if you notice here, the program is actually working for the second block, even though the points were the same. I created the points actually for the first block. All I did was I just changed the work object, and what happened is the points got updated for the new location of the work object for the part. Okay, so this is what I wanted to illustrate with respect to work object and what's the importance of the work object when it comes to robotic programming and the different work coordinate systems that you have. Okay, hopefully you've enjoyed this video, and I'm going to post more videos in the future. So I'm going to press the stop here.